This is the quick audio version of the Frankenstein graphic novel, and this version is in modern day language. So when you click this link right here, it'll open up your text, and you'll see for this week we are reading part one. This other information will be filled out later, but we are looking at pages 7 through 38, or if you use the PDF page numbers, it's 4 through page 20. So here is what that looks like. You can see the PDF page numbers down here. So I'm on page 1 of 71, and the actual page numbers will show up in the bottom corner of the text. So as we start reading, this story starts from Robert Walton's perspective. So remember, he is an explorer. He's on his way to the Arctic, and these are letters that he is writing his sister Margaret. Near the coast of Russia, from the letters of Robert Walton. Letter 1, December 11th, 1700 something. My dear sister, I'm already far from London. The cold northern wind on my face fills me with happiness. It gives me a taste of the wonderful place I am going to. At the North Pole, Margaret, the sun is always in the sky. It's a land of beauty and amazing sights. So he sounds so hopeful right here. Notice this is December. And notice how his tone changes in his other letters. I have dreamed of making this voyage since I was a child. I've read travelers' descriptions of their attempts to find the North Pacific Ocean. Do I not deserve to achieve something great? I've decided not to have an easy, comfortable life, but to go on a long, difficult voyage. Letter 2, March 28th. How slowly the time passes here. I have no friends here, Margaret. If I succeed, no one will feel pleased. If I fail, no one will comfort me. I can't describe my feelings as I get nearer to my goal. Letter 3, July 7th. We have come a long way north. Please don't worry. I will be careful. Letter 4, August 5th. Last Monday, the ship was nearly surrounded by ice, and there was a very thick fog. We decided to stop moving and to wait for a change in the weather. This is a Gothic element right here. Remember, any mention of weather, that's usually an indicator that something big or dramatic is about to happen. At 2 o'clock, the fog disappeared and there was ice everywhere. As far as we could see, we were worried, and then in the distance, we saw something strange. So they're in the middle of nowhere. Not a lot of people have ever went on this voyage before. And lo and behold, they see something strange. It was a sled about half a mile away. A huge man was driving it. We were amazed to see someone so far from the land. We were unable to follow him because we were stuck in the ice. So large man on a sled being pulled by dogs out in the Arctic in the middle of nowhere. The next morning, when I woke up, all the sailors were talking to someone in the sea. It was in fact a similar sled which had come toward us in the night on a large piece of ice. The man aboard was not huge like the other traveler, but a European. The sailors were persuading him to come onto the ship. So they see another person out in the Arctic in the middle of nowhere. This text right here, this beige kind of yellowy text, this is narration. So this is one of the characters in the story, Robert Walton, who is telling us the story. When we have dialogue in this graphic novel, it's going to pop up as a bubble right here above the people's heads. So this is dialogue. Here is our captain, and he won't let you die out on the ice. Could you tell me where you're going? We're on a voyage of discovery to the North Pole. When he heard this, he agreed to come on board. He was nearly frozen and extremely thin. I've never seen a man in such a terrible state. Slowly we helped him recover. 2 days passed before he was able to speak. Why did you come so far on the ice? I was looking for someone who had run away from me. I think we've seen him. We saw a man on a sled. Some dogs were pulling it across the ice. Do you think that when the ice broke, it destroyed his sled? The ice didn't break until nearly midnight. He was probably safe by then. I'm sure you want to ask me a lot of questions. You saved me and have brought me back to life. The stranger suddenly seemed more alive. August 13th. I like my guest more and more each day. I admire him and also feel sorry for him. He has now recovered from his illness. August 19th. Yesterday he said to me, "You can see, Captain Moulton, that I have suffered greatly. You are looking for knowledge as I did. I hope it will not hurt you as it hurt me. You may learn something from my story. Listen to it. You'll see how nothing can change my destiny now." So this is a very ominous warning right here. Listen to my story. I hope you learn something, and I hope it doesn't hurt you like it hurt me. He also mentions destiny right here. He's going to mention destiny and fate again here shortly. Volume 1, Chapter 1. My name is Victor Frankenstein. My parents were from Geneva and were very well respected there. After they married, they traveled to Italy, Germany, and Naples. I was born in Naples. For several years, I was their only child. They loved me deeply. When I was about 5 years old, my mother adopted a little girl. She was the daughter of a nobleman who had died. Elizabeth Lavenza became more than a sister to me. We did everything together. I loved her very much. Volume 1, Chapter 2. We were brought up together. There was less than a year between our ages. When my parents had another son, we went back to Geneva and settled there. In Geneva, I became close friends with Henry Clerval. He loved reading and writing stories. Elizabeth was kind and loving. She showed Clerval the beauty of goodness. I read with great pleasure the works of men who had studied nature and discovered its secrets. I became their follower. I didn't want money, but I wanted the glory of a great discovery. I wanted to free people from disease. Notice the similarities between what Robert Walton wants and what Victor Frankenstein wanted. They're not in this to be comfortable, to have money. They are on this discovery, whether it's to the Arctic or studying nature and its secrets, in order to feel accomplished themselves. They want the glory of being the first to discover something. When I was 15, I witnessed a terrible storm, so another weather element here. The thunder was frighteningly loud. As I watched the storm, a stream of fire suddenly came out of an old tree near our house. When the fire died out, most of the tree had disappeared. So this is hitting back on galvanism. When you learned about Mary Shelley, you learned that galvanism was starting to take off during this time period. And just a reminder, it's where people use electricity to spark or ignite life in something. The next morning we found that the bottom of the tree had been broken into long, thin pieces. I became interested in electricity and I began to study mathematics and other sciences. But destiny was too powerful. She had already decided on my destruction. So hitting on destiny and fate again here. Volume 1, Chapter 3. When I was 17, my parents decided to send me to Ingolstadt University. Then Elizabeth became very sick. My mother took care of her, and Elizabeth recovered. However, then my mother became sick. I always wanted you to marry each other. Elizabeth, my love, you must be a mother to my younger children. I am sad that I have to leave you, but I will try to accept death cheerfully. I hope to see you in another world. She died calmly. My mother was dead, but we still had duties to perform. Elizabeth in her sorrow and tried to but we still had duties to perform. Elizabeth hid her sorrow and tried to comfort us all. So I know you're probably thinking this is weird that they have grown up as siblings. Elizabeth is his adopted sister, and now the mother wants them to get married. So remember, they don't have any relations, blood relations. They are just adopted siblings. Finally, the day came when I had to go to Ingolstadt. Right often, Victor. I loved my brothers, Elizabeth and Clerval, but I longed to acquire knowledge. After a long, tiring journey, I arrived at Ingolstadt. The next morning, I delivered my letters of introduction. Chance led me first to Monsieur Crimp, professor of natural science. I respected him, although I disliked him immediately. Have you really spent your time studying this nonsense? Yes. What a waste of time. You must begin your studies again. I went into the lecture hall of Monsieur Waldman. He was very different. The ancient teachers promised much, but produced nothing. The modern masters promise very little, but show us much about nature. They have new powers over heaven and earth. Soon I only wanted to explore unknown powers and discover the deepest mysteries of creation. Volume 1, Chapter 4. I found a true friend in Monsieur Waldman. He smoothed the path of knowledge for me in 1,000 ways. In the next 2 years, my discoveries made me well respected at the university. I was especially interested in anything that lived. I wanted to know where life came from. To examine the causes of life, we must first examine death. I wanted to see what happens to the body after death. To me, a graveyard was just a place that was full of dead bodies. I wasn't afraid of it. For days and nights, I examined dead bodies and how they decayed. Then suddenly, after weeks of extremely hard work, I succeeded in discovering the cause of life. For a long time, I wasn't sure how to use this astonishing power. I was able to create life. Imagine the power he must have felt, knowing that he is able to create a life after discovering the cause of life. But to make a body remained extremely difficult. The smallness of many parts of the body made my work very slow, so I decided to make the body larger than normal, about 8 feet tall. Making this body was all I could think about. Alone in my room, I worked on my creation. Often I hated what I was doing. I worked so hard that I became sick and very nervous. I couldn't speak to anyone. So you should be asking yourself, if he hates what he's doing, if he's turning into a different person mentally and physically, then why is he continuing on with this scientific experiment? Volume 1, Chapter 5. On a dark evening in November, I finally finished. Look at the pictures here. You're going to see a lot of these Gothic elements shine through in the pictures. I prepared to put life into the lifeless thing. He was perfect. Great God, he opened a dull yellow eye. Then he began to breathe and move. I had worked hard for this moment for 2 years, but now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream disappeared, and I was filled with horror. So the monster, the creature has finally come alive. He's making all kinds of noises, stumbling around, and Victor takes off running. I couldn't bear to look at him. I ran out of the room. I couldn't forget the monster, and I had the wildest dreams. Nightmares are another Gothic element. I dreamed about Elizabeth. She was walking in Ingolstadt. Pleased and surprised, I embraced her, but as I kissed her lips, they turned deadly white, and she became my dead mother. I woke up in horror. Think about what this dream means. So usually it's foreshadowing something, or it's highlighting a fear that the character has. What kind of fear does this show that Frankenstein has over Elizabeth? I woke up in horror. I saw the monster that I had created. Oh, perhaps he'd spoken, but I didn't hear. One hand reached out to stop me, but I escaped. And I ran into the courtyard. I stayed there all night. all the time I was listening for the sound of the monster. His ugliness was incredible. What I had dreamed of had become my hell. When morning came, I wanted to avoid the monster. I did not dare to return to my apartment, so I walked around the town. I didn't know where I was or what I was doing. My heart beat hard with fear. My dear Frankenstein, I'm so pleased to see you. I took his hand and quickly forgot my horror. Henry Clerval. My father has finally allowed me to attend university. I'm so happy to see you. But tell me, how are my father, brothers, and Elizabeth? Very well and very happy, but they are a little uneasy that they hear from you so rarely. You look very thin and pale. Have you not slept for several nights? No, I've been working so hard on something that I haven't rested properly, but I hope that's finished now. I was shaken nervously as we walked to my college. I thought the creature could still be in my apartment. I was afraid to see him, but even more afraid that Henry would see him. Henry, wait here for a few minutes. I felt cold with fear, but I saw that my enemy had gone. Notice he does not tell Henry Clerval about his creation. He keeps this a secret from him. I clapped my hands for joy and rained down for Henry. The servant brought us breakfast, but I was too excited to eat. He's kind of laughing a little nervously here. And Henry says, Victor, what's the matter? What's making you like this? I thought I had seen the monster in my room. He can tell you. Oh, save me. So now he's seeing things? Save me. I fell down in a fit and didn't recover for a long, long time. So now he is seeing things that aren't actually there. Henry took care of me for several months. He didn't tell my family about my illness. Very, very slowly I recovered. Spring arrived and this helped me. Dearest Henry, how good you've been to me. You've taken care of me all winter instead of studying. How will I ever repay you? You'll repay me if you get well as fast as you can. And because you seem much better, could you write to your father and Elizabeth? They're worried by your long silence. Yes, I've been thinking about them. Then you'll be pleased to see this letter. It's been here for some days. It's from Elizabeth, I think. Volume 1, Chapter 6. Dear Victor, you have been sick, very sick, and I'm worried about you. Get well and come home. Your father really wants to see you. Ernest is 16 now. He wants very much to go abroad, but we can't let him leave until you come home. And little William is lovely. He is very tall for his age and smiles and laughs a lot. He already has 2 little wives. Louisa is his favorite. She's 5. Do you remember our servant Justine Morowitz? Her mother treated her badly, so she came to us when she was 12. You liked her very much. She could always make you feel happy. One by one, her brothers and sisters died, and her mother called her home. Sometimes her mother was sorry for what she had done. At other times, she said that Justine had caused the deaths of her brothers and sister. But now her mother is at peace. She died at the beginning of last winter. Justine has come back to us, and I love her dearly. She is clever, gentle, and very pretty. I feel better now because I have written to you, dear Victor. Goodbye, and please write to me, Elizabeth Lavenza. Dear, dear Elizabeth, I will write immediately. I wrote and felt very tired, but it was the start of my recovery. 2 weeks later, I was well enough to leave my room. I hated natural science. In the sight of my scientific equipment, I could never tell Henry about what I had done or what had happened on that terrible night. Henry had come to the university to study the languages of the East, and I began to study them with him. I found comfort in the writings of the Eastern poets. They wrote about a warm sun and gardens, an enemy who behaves well, and the fire that burns in your own heart. So notice he completely stopped studying what he went to Ingolstadt for. It took him 2 years to create life, And once his creation came alive, he is now horrified by what he has done. He wants to completely forget about it and move on to study something new. Summer passed and winter came. I wanted to go back to Geneva, but there was too much snow. Spring came again. Henry suggested that we go walking around Ingolstadt before we returned to Geneva. What an excellent friend. For 2 weeks we walked in the countryside. Henry taught me to love nature again and the happy faces of children. I felt very happy and had no worries at all. This is where that romantic movement is starting to shine through in this story. Remember Mary Shelley's bringing in some of those nature elements, and once you mentally struggle with something, she, like Victor Frankenstein here, she has him connect back to nature and notice it's making him feel mentally better as well. And that's where we're going to stop for today.